You're about to meet Clifton Jaeger, gifted artist and architect. Here he is, painting murals at his Falls Village residence. This is the mural he designed for residents in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, who restored an old mansion. The former West Main restaurant in Lakeville, Connecticut features a combination of murals. Clifton created this mural for folks in San Francisco. It's inspired by textiles from India. This mural, commissioned by a resident in Florida, represents specific shipwrecks during the hurricane of 1715. The Elizabeth Taylor Room at the Bel Air Hotel in Los Angeles showcases this mural. Clifton installed this forest mural in the pool house of interior decorator Bunny Williams, also of Falls Village. And here are some of Clifton Jaeger's other murals. To work on these large paintings, Clifton needed a lot of space, so he purchased St. Patrick's Church in Falls Village.
So, in the summer of 2003, I was at the cafe where Toy Makers is now, and reading the New York Times. There was a front page article that the Archdiocese of New England was going to sell $450 million in real estate by selling off country parishes, churches. And I was really struck by that article because the reason for them to sell the real estate is that in the article it said that they were going to pay for insurance policy against future pederast priests and future lawsuits, not even things that they were fighting now, but they were going to get insurance. And it really struck me, and I decided to go for a walk, put the paper under my arm and walk. I was on Main Street, walked up BB Hill, and noticed the first building practically I saw was a country chapel, and no one had mowed the lawn for quite a while. On the door there was a note that said, "For worship, go to St. Joseph's in Canaan." And it was a time in my life where I needed studio space. I had just gotten a commission from Bunny Williams to do like a 110-foot mural, 9 feet high, of a landscape for a living room in Westport, Connecticut. And I was going to be working on that for a couple of months, and I thought, gee, it's like a barn, basically. But it had no insulation, needed quite a bit of work, but I wrote a few letters to the Archdiocese. I got no response, and then randomly I read a note. I read something where if you send somebody a FedEx, like an overnight, that you're more likely to get a response. And a week after sending a FedEx, I got a non-disclosure agreement in the mail from a law firm in Hartford and I was legally bound to not talk about the sale for a year, or after signing the NDA, and then I bought it for the appraised value. It was very simple, but I wasn't able to tell anybody in town during the process. I was really, I had really mixed feelings, because I think that this building really was built clearly. I mean, practically every structural member is signed with a crayon of St. Patrick's Church, Falls Village. I mean, it was lovingly built by the community. I wonder, probably most of it paid for by the community and maintained by the community. And then to have this seeming business entity sell it to pay for an insurance policy to prevent people from suing them for crimes it's complicated, and I didn't feel like I didn't want to feel like I was taking something away from the community or profiting by that in any way. But I had a lot of support, and at the time there were very few parishioners, and it was interesting because Mr. Knesny in Canaan passed away very devout Catholic family, and his funeral was the last service held here. He was on his deathbed at Gear. He asked for a Latin mass, a requiem mass sung in Latin, and they couldn't. Jennifer is a friend, and she couldn't get anybody else to do it, so she got a priest to come from the Finger Lakes, and I think there were maybe 300 people here. It's crazy. It was just a beautiful, like, closing the loop for this as a chapel, I think. And as you can see, it's a great space to work in, especially if you have to be inside all winter. It's nice to have the light and the space to work on larger projects. And, so yeah, that's the story of how I ended up owning it.
Let's backtrack. Village. Let's backtrack a little bit. What brought you to Falls Village? How did you discover Falls Village?
My ex-wife parents had a place in Lakeville, and my parents had a place in Hillsdale. And when we got married, we bought a farm up on BB Hill, a colonial house up on BB Hill, and lived there for years. Our daughters were born here, went to the daycare, and then at a certain point we got a divorce, and this is where I moved to. Just down the street from her.
Yeah.
On purpose, so yeah.
Is she still around?
Yeah, she lives in Lakeville. We're good friends. We co-parent, and
good.
You know, and for the girls are really, my daughters are very comfortable going between the houses, and so yeah. So yeah, that's about it. I mean, I produce a number of different things. It might seem from the outside like I do a number of different things, but for me, they all originate with a pencil and a drawing. So it could be designing a parade float, or a house, or a mural, or, you know, I'm good at producing or manifesting ideas into reality with interiors and architecture and things like that. So, I've worked with interior designers for years, and I really enjoy making them look good, you know, by getting the bones right of a space. So I work, and I've got some local work also. I work basically as an architectural designer, doing plans, drafting plans. So yeah. Anything else?
You have a great smile.
Thank you.
I'm glad
we
got that.
Yeah, I mean, you can see this space. It's really been great with my kids growing up here. Instead of, I mean, there's a lot of places. I think that wouldn't be as easy to be let your kids use art materials on a regular basis. Like I think one of the things is being a parent is you really, if you create scenarios or create a situation where a kid can thrive, they'll jump in and do something. And so I like to step back, and both my daughters are in art school right now, and they show up on the weekends and they're painting, and one daughter works in metals, and she'll be banging out a piece of jewelry, and so that's been really fun. So.
Are you still doing murals?
Oh yeah, I'm doing a big mural right now in Millbrook. I do a lot of them on canvas and then ship them, and some of them I paint on site, but not as much as I used to, because I travel a lot for the architecture. I have a project in Italy right now. I'm doing something interesting, and I work in Jamaica. I'm in Jamaica a week and a half every month. Been there doing that for 5 years now. And I own a house in Mexico, so I go there quite a bit. So this has really been a great space to incubate ideas. You know, I'll be on the road. It's hard to get certain kind of work done on the road. So I can come here and, you know, and I love the community. I mean, I really appreciate my neighbors, and I feel like Falls Village is just a wonderful situation, because we don't have a main road going through the middle. It's really preserved its character of a quaint, you know, a nice country town, and you know your neighbors, and it's safe for children to play in the street, and so that's really nice. And all the new people that have moved into town recently. It's just been great to see young children that'll build the community more. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Good.
yeah. So
Are all these pictures yours?
yeah, pretty much. And my daughter's actually the portraits over here are Emma's. She's a portrait artist. My paintings are mostly of the waterfall. I've been working on the waterfall series for a while. So,
Do you take a photograph of the waterfall and then bring it home to paint?
no, I don't
Or do
actually.
you paint on the scene?
No, I don't. It's funny. I'm not. I don't. It's hard for me to pull life out of a photograph. I mean, I really enjoy photography as a separate medium, but what I do is I take a sketch pad and some watercolors and ink, and I'll go there, and instead of worrying about making it look like reality, I try and extract how it makes me feel in the moment and what those shapes look like. And they're inspired by, maybe it's water swirling. When it floods, those islands below the falls flood, and you can see the water swirling around the trees that are, it's a surreal landscape because it's like smooth. You have trees sticking up out of it, and then the falls themselves, there's this gesture. So I'm trying to capture that with a pencil, and I find that's a lot easier to then translate to a canvas versus like looking at a photograph and trying to recreate that, because it's like, photo's like its own thing.
You mentioned before we started that your persona in Falls Village is different than your persona overseas.
Well, I mean, in my job site in Jamaica, there's like probably got 25 guys working, and there's a hierarchy, and I'm the architect, and I come in, and I do a lot of construction, and it's fun to come back here and just be like a retired guy walking his dog. I don't have any big projects going on here that are visible, and down there I have contractors I work with, and it's just a whole really busy kind of a life. And here it's much more tranquil.
Yeah. Let's talk about the houses you're building. These are in Mexico. What about the ongoing projects in Jamaica?
I've been working they're made of solid stone, which is really interesting. I found a 1720s ruin in Jamaica in the jungle that I negotiated to purchase from the landowner, and it took us a year to deconstruct these ruins made of stone. It's like a sugar mill built by the British, and those are the materials I'm using to build the buildings I'm building now.
Wow.
So it's just like, it took us like 10 months, and we made a massive pile of hand-cut stone blocks. So imagine them like Legos, and door sills and window sills and arches, and all set aside and numbered. And so now we're putting them back together in a different. So that's been really unique. I mean, the travel is really inconvenient, so this is worth it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the houses in Mexico are on your website, Casa Oasis.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to get published in a Rizzoli book, and that's a 12,000 square foot Arab house that is really a whole essay on geometry, basically. That there's some very traditional Islamic architectural elements in that. Very deliberate use of geometry in the patterns, the ornamentation. There's all this different shapes have different symbols. It's water and earth and fire, and those are all represented in different geometric bands that go around the larger spaces, like the courtyards and the rooms, and those chains are unbroken. So like, there's something in Islamic architecture, theoretically, if you can make sense of the universe with math, it's not chaos. It's you know, it's this fighting of chaos and trying to make order of the universe, and the complexity, the more complex it is, the closer you are to God. And these chains, if they're unbroken, bring you prosperity and good luck and water, fertility, all kinds of things can be implied. But it's really fun to, because the owner and I went on a journey really in studying this for a couple of years. We did 3 trips to the Middle East. I spent maybe a month in Syria ordering all of the brass parts in the souk in Damascus, like 80 doorknobs, all of the faucets. We had them all custom made by this brass guy in Damascus. And then while we were waiting for the order to be completed, which took about 3 weeks, we hired a car and went into northern Syria and Aleppo and Palmyra near the Iraq border, and then drove back through Hama and Homs, and then into Lebanon and Jordan. Really interesting. My client had lived in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for 35 years and really experienced. She didn't speak Arabic, but she could get us in and out of a cab, and totally fearless. And so it's funny, we traveled as brother and sister and just went this was maybe 6 months before the war broke out in northern Syria. And in fact, a number of the places we went have been completely destroyed. Crac de Chevalier, which was Richard the Lionheart's, he was stuck in Syria for 3 years in a battle with the great Saladin in one of his crusades, and they carved these chapels out of the caves in solid rock above the battle plain, and they were stuck there for years. And there's a spring in this cave, and the Crusaders hung out there, I guess the Templar Knights. And it's one of the most interesting places I've ever seen. And I'm a photographer, and I took I think maybe 300 or 400 images that day. It had just rained, sun came out, it was just perfect conditions. And anyway, to make a long story short, about 8 months later, Al Qaeda blew it up. It's gone.
Wow. Do you have any goals that you haven't strived for yet?
Yeah.
Dreams?
I want to write a book.
With pictures that you've done?
No, actually, it's somewhat autobiographical. I was born in the Caribbean, in Puerto Rico. My dad was an engineer, and he had a schooner. We spent a lot of time sailing amongst the islands, and he had a project in Haiti. I lived in Haiti for a while. Went to school there in Port-au-Prince. When I was 9, and the housekeeper, the family, I was living with his business partner, and the housekeeper was a voodoo priestess, and she used to take us up to Mont Noir, this literally sort of the center for voodoo culture in Haiti. We'd go up there on the weekends, because my dad had a friend who was an Episcopal minister who ran a mission, sort of on the edge of civilization in the mountains in Haiti, and he would send us up there on the weekends. To learn French or something, and it's crazy. So I had some experiences that are really interesting, and they have to do. So I'm exploring some themes that are coming out of that, and one of them is an artist who's had these experiences, and he's coming out in his work. So it's a fictional novelization. It's a little ambitious for a first book, but I've been working on it for a while, and I've gotten some encouragement, and it's we'll see.
Yeah.
I prefer not to get my hopes up until I do it.
Thank you so much, Clifton.
Oh, you're welcome, Eric. It was nice meeting you.